It was just an ordinary afternoon in Virginia. The cicadas were loud in the trees. The sprinkler arced across my parents' lawn, and my father's old newspaper lay folded on the porch swing. On the surface, everything looked calm, familiar, safe, yet the quiet pressed on my chest like a weight. I had just returned from overseas, a uniform still in my suitcase, and all I wanted was one simple thing: to see my car waiting where I left it. But the garage door was open, and the space inside was hollow. No gleam of chrome, no rally red shimmer, no sound of a machine holding its breath, just empty concrete. That was the paradox I had faced: desert firefights and foreign battlefields. But nothing prepared me for the silence of that garage. My name is Capitan Jimena Morales, 35 years old, and an officer in the United States Army. People imagine soldiers like me dream of medals, rank, or a house with a flag out front. My dream was smaller, stranger, and louder. A 1969 Camaro, the car I had once whispered to myself I would own. That promise began in my grandfather's garage when I was 7. He was a World War II veteran, his back bent but his hands steady as he rebuilt engines piece by piece. While other children traced coloring books, I sat beside him on a stool, my small hands blackened with grease, learning how to coax life back into a Jeep that had carried soldiers across Europe. He taught me the language of machines, the way a spark plug could change a heartbeat, how oil smelled different when an engine was sick. Cars have souls, Jimena, he would murmur, wiping his brow. If you listen close, they'll tell you what they need. The first time he pulled back a tarp and revealed a Camaro, red like fire under dust, I held my breath. That was the moment I made my vow. One day, this dream car will be mine. My parents never believed in that vow. My mother sighed when I came home smelling of gasoline, muttering that I should care about dresses instead of dipsticks. My father shook his head, more disappointed than angry. And always there was Luz, my younger sister, delicate, adored, praised for everything I was not. Ballet shoes for her, hand-me-down boots for me, a sweet 16 party for her, a slice of cake at the kitchen table for me. I loved her. But I also learned early that in this house I would never be enough. So I chose the army. Discipline, grit, sacrifice. It became the family I lacked. I worked, I served, I saved. No vacations, no luxuries, just years of hunger for one goal. The day I finally signed the papers for that Camaro, I heard my grandfather's voice as clearly as if he were alive. We did it, Nessie. That car was my proof that sweat, discipline, and sacrifice could turn into beauty. Yet standing in my parents' driveway, the ordinary hum of summer all around me, I felt my world tilt. The dream I had bled for was gone, and the war I never expected, the one inside my own family, was about to begin. The silence of that empty garage carried me back not to Virginia, but to the desert. Afghanistan had a way of burning itself into your memory. The smell of dust and cordite, the taste of sand in every bite of food. For 2 deployments, I lived in that world. Nights on the hard ground, where the sand never cooled. Days sprinting under a sky cut with gunfire. Months surviving on MREs, until I could no longer tell the flavors apart. While Luz was handed a brand new Mustang the day she graduated high school, a ribbon tied neatly on the hood, I counted crumpled bills and watched every dime of my army pay vanish into savings. There were no shortcuts for me, no gifts waiting with a bow. My reward was survival. My luxury was a cot in a tent, and my hope was a single promise I whispered to myself each time the desert night grew too quiet. Hold on. One day you'll drive it. 7 years. 7 years of grit, sweat, and discipline, of missed holidays and birthdays spent in uniform. 7 years of writing letters home that no one ever answered. But at the end of those years, there it was. My 1969 Camaro, rally red curves like fire. The dream car that had lived in my head since childhood. $85,000. Every cent carved from sacrifice. The day I signed the title, I stood in the dealership's parking lot longer than I should have, just staring. My hands trembled when I touched the door handle, as if I were afraid the dream might dissolve into dust. Then I slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared alive. It wasn't just a sound. It was a heartbeat, deep and steady, the echo of my grandfather's chest when he lifted me onto his knee. Driving it back through the gates of my base, I felt something rare, a stillness inside, a certainty that all the years, all the scars had led me here. I whispered the only words that mattered. We did it, Abuelo. That car wasn't bought with money alone. It was bought with miles marched, nights endured, bullets dodged. It was my blood and sweat forged into steel and chrome. And for a fleeting moment behind that wheel, I believed I had finally claimed the one thing no one could take from me. For a time, I thought I could finally breathe. The Camaro was mine, the promise fulfilled. But the Army never lets you rest for long. In June, orders came down. I'd been selected for a NATO training exercise in Germany. It was the kind of assignment that could open doors, the sort of line on a record that nudges a career forward. I should have felt pride. Instead, I felt the weight of absence pressing in. 30 days away from the car I had bled for. The base where I was stationed wasn't secure. Theft happened. Vandalism happened. I couldn't bring myself to leave the Camaro exposed to strangers. So, I made the decision I would come to regret. I drove it home to Virginia, back to the garage where I once built dreams from rust and oil. Before I left, I stood in that garage with my father. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and gasoline, a mix of childhood and war. I met his eyes and said slowly, each word heavy, "Don't drive it. Don't touch it. Just start the engine once a week." He nodded too quickly, and then looked away. That flicker, so brief I almost doubted I saw it, stirred something uneasy in me. That evening, we gathered for dinner, the four of us, at the same table where I had once counted candles while Luz blew them out. She was scrolling her phone between bites of steak, sighing loud enough for the walls to hear. "All my friends are going on Caribbean cruises," she whined, eyes fixed on the screen. "Meanwhile, I'm stuck here, broke. Life's just unfair." My mother reached across the table, resting her hand on Luz's shoulder with the kind of tenderness I had long since forgotten. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, as though Luz carried the weight of the world. My father cut his meat in silence. I sat there, fork idle, the taste of iron on my tongue. The Camaro keys burned in my pocket like a warning. I wanted to speak, to name the truth that always hung unspoken in that house. That her wants were luxuries, while my sacrifices had been survival. Instead, I swallowed it, pushing the words down where they would gnaw at me through the night. I told myself it was only 30 days. 30 days, and I'd be back behind the wheel. 30 days, and my car, my dream, would still be waiting. 30 days. I repeated it like a prayer while I was gone. 30 days, and I would be home, back behind the wheel. Yet, when the transport plane touched down at Ramstein, my pulse didn't quicken the way it did when missions began. It quickened when the taxi back in Virginia turned into my parents' driveway. I wasn't thinking about NATO reports or training exercises. I was thinking of that garage door, lifting to reveal red steel and chrome. But the door was already open, and the space was hollow. Concrete floor, oil-stained, nothing else. My breath caught in my throat, sharp and dry. The driveway blurred as I stumbled inside, my heartbeat pounding in my planeta, my ears like boots on a parade ground. In the kitchen, the world was calm. My mother sat at the table, steam curling from a cup of tea, her face as composed as Sunday mornings in church. She didn't even look up as she spoke, voice casual, almost relieved. "Thanks to your car, Luz finally got the trip of her life." I froze. My lips parted, but no sound came. When words finally did, they cut like glass. "You sold my Camaro." The last word cracked in my throat. My father exhaled, as though my grief was an inconvenience. He set his knife down, rubbed his forehead, and said with a weary finality, "You're a soldier, Jimena. You've got money. You'll buy another one. Luz only has one youth." For a moment, I almost laughed. Not the kind of laugh born of humor, but the bitter kind that claws its way out when the truth is too heavy to swallow. They had stripped from me not just a car, but the proof of years spent in deserts, of nights slept under foreign stars, of sacrifices carved into my very bones, and they dismissed it with tea and sighs. I looked at them, my mother's calm, my father's resignation, and I understood something the battlefield had never taught me. Enemies are not always faceless men, with rifles in the distance. Sometimes they're the people who raised you. Sometimes they sit across the table, sipping tea as though they haven't just betrayed your very soul. For a long moment, I stood there in silence, staring at the people who had just dismantled 7 years of my life with a shrug. Then, slowly, the sound broke out of me. A laugh. Not the brittle laugh of grief, but something sharper, edged with bitterness. My mother's teacup trembled at the sound. "You sold a car," I said finally, my voice low. "That didn't even belong to me." Their eyes widened, confusion flickering into unease. My father leaned forward, his brows furrowed. My mother's lips parted as if to protest, but I raised a hand. "Before I left," I continued, "Sargento Efren Vargas, the man who once pulled me out of an ambush in Afghanistan, told me something I couldn't ignore. Never leave your treasure unguarded in the wrong hands." So I listened. I switched the cars. I let the words sink in. The real Camaro is safe. It's in Vargas's garage right now, locked behind steel, untouched. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father sat back in his chair, color draining from his face. "What you sold," I went on, "was a replica, a near-perfect build owned by Mayor Tiago." My voice steadied, though my pulse hammered in my throat. "My boyfriend. He loaned it to me for one purpose, to test your loyalty." The kitchen felt smaller with each word, the air taut as wire. And then the door opened. Tiago stepped inside in full uniform, his presence filling the room like a cold front. His eyes, hard and unblinking, swept over my parents before his voice cut through the silence. "You just committed auto theft. Fraud in Virginia. That can mean 10 years behind bars." The weight of his words landed like artillery. My father's face turned ashen. His jaw clenched, but no words came. My mother's hands shook as she whispered, We didn't know. But I had learned something the army drilled into us, something that could never be unlearned. Ignorance is not a defense." I looked at them then, not as a daughter begging for recognition, but as a soldier who had finally seen the battlefield for what it was. And for the first time, I didn't feel small in that house. I felt like the ground itself had shifted, the silence finally broken, and all the years of dismissal turning back on them like a mirror. They could not escape. The silence after Tiago's words was broken not by my parents, but by the sharp ring of my phone. For a moment, I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to. "This is Baltazar Torres," a man's voice said, firm, clipped, military in tone. "I just bought a Camaro from your parents. There's a problem with the paperwork." The name struck a chord. Torres, former Marine. I remembered hearing of him once, a collector who treated cars with the same respect soldiers gave their rifles. Straightforward, principled, and above all, a man who understood the law. I swallowed hard. "Where did you get my number?" "From the bill of sale," he replied. "Your signature is on it, or at least it's supposed to be." My blood went cold. That night, I drove straight to base, straight into the office of a JAG lawyer. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she flipped through the documents Torres had scanned and sent. She didn't take long. "Forgery," she said flatly, tapping her pen on the page. "Your parents signed your name. They sold property that was never legally theirs. That's fraudulent transfer of assets. At best, it's civil liability. At worst," she paused, meeting my eyes, "it's a felony. They could face criminal charges." I leaned back in the stiff chair, every nerve in my body taut. Outside, the flag on the parade ground snapped in the night wind. Inside, my family's betrayal was being cataloged into legal language: fraud, forgery, theft, cold words for wounds that still bled. And then my phone buzzed again. Not Torres this time. Social media. Luz's account lit up with new photos. Champagne bottles spraying. Her arm around a man I didn't recognize. Her grin wide under the Caribbean sun. The caption read, "Living my best life." I stared until the image blurred. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. That yacht, that laughter, that indulgence, it was all paid for with what I'd carved out of dust and sweat. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was years of sacrifice turned into her vacation. And in that moment, I understood Luz wasn't just careless. She was complicit. She was celebrating with the blood and sweat that were mine. The image of Luz laughing on that yacht wouldn't leave me. It played over and over until my resolve hardened into something sharp. That night I called her. My voice was steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. "Luz, we need to talk now." At first, she tried to joke, tried to deflect, but when I said the words "prison time," the silence on the other end stretched long. I could almost see the color drain from her face, through the phone. Within an hour, she was home. I gathered them all in the living room. My parents on one couch, Luz pacing near the fireplace. Beside me sat Tiago, still in uniform, and Sargento Efren Vargas, arms crossed, steady as a rock. They weren't just company. They were witnesses, guardians of the truth I was about to force into the open. The words erupted out of me, raw and long buried. Since childhood, everything was Luz's. The toys, the praise, the attention. While I fought for scraps, you handed her the world. And now, after all my years of service, after all my blood, you sell my dream, my Camaro. The air shook with the weight of it. My father bowed his head, unable to meet my eyes. My mother's hands trembled as she began to weep softly. But Luz's face twisted, and her voice broke into a shout. "You're all just jealous. Admit it. Mom and Dad love me more and you can't stand it." The words hung in the room like shrapnel. For the first time, the truth wasn't whispered in glances or buried under silence. It was spoken aloud, undeniable. The very foundation of our family cracked in that moment. No one argued. No one tried to deny it. The room was still except for my mother's sobs. Finally, I laid it out plain. "You will make this right. The money goes back, every dollar. You'll sell the jewelry if you have to. Take out loans. Luz, you'll contribute, too. And you will all sign papers, notarized, swearing never to touch anything of mine again." There was no fight left in them. Nods, tears, resignation. For once, the power had shifted. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the soldier who had finally forced them to face the truth they had hidden for decades. And they knew, as well as I did, that nothing would ever return to the way it was. The weeks that followed were quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the aftermath of a storm. Papers were signed, debts arranged, and silence settled into the corners of the house, where arguments used to live. But beneath it, something had shifted. One evening, months later, my father appeared in the garage doorway. He cleared his throat, the way men do when words feel foreign on their tongues. "Jimena," he said softly, "do you want to help me fix up Jorge's old Jeep? I'd like to learn." For a moment, I couldn't speak. He wasn't asking about cars. He was asking for connection, for a bridge across the years of distance. It wasn't an apology in words, but it was close enough. My mother started therapy around that time. She began to speak differently, tentative but aware, as though she had finally recognized the patterns she once called love, but which had always been chains. Luz, stripped of the easy money she had once leaned on, stumbled into the working world. For the first time in her life, she paid her own bills, her laughter quieter, her eyes less sure. And me? I went back to the road. The Camaro roared to life beneath my hands, its engine note filling the Virginia air, as if it were echoing the beat of my own heart. I drove the coastline, The ocean stretching wide to my right, wind tangling through my hair. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. That car had been my promise, my burden, my test. Now it was something more. It was proof, not that I had beaten them, but that I had endured them. Proof that I was strong enough to draw lines, to say no, to confront betrayal without letting it hollow me out. As the sun dipped low, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. My reflection was steady, unflinching. I whispered into the wind, "This isn't just a dream car. It's the proof that I'm no longer their shadow. I am my own." And the Camaro answered with a growl, a sound not of victory, but of freedom.